Hi, I'm Akhil.
And I'm Rohan.
Welcome to The Long Take. This week, we're just doing something very different, which we haven't done in the history of the entire podcast, 150 episodes or something. We're discussing a movie that did not release this week or the previous week or about to come or like 3 months earlier. This is 40 years earlier. It's called Jaane Bhi Do Yaaro. I don't think I need to introduce the movie, but like it has Naseeruddin Shah for people who need to know. Om Puri, Pankaj Kapoor, Satish Shah, literally people you very well know like now. But back then was mostly unknowns, if I'm not wrong.
They were starting out, scrappy
Right.
team.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously parts to this movie like which a lot of parts of the movie that work. But what I'm gonna start with off is what parts of you like when you're rewatching this time like did not work for you.
I'm not sure actually because I rewatch this movie quite regularly
Right.
and have seen it probably more than any Hindi film at least. So there's not enough like space between this rewatch and the last one. Like I think I watched it last year. And yeah, I mean it's one of those movies where I know what's going to happen. Like I know each and every like line, I know each scene. So I don't know if I can even objectively say what doesn't work.
Okay.
What didn't work for you? Had you seen it before?
Yeah. I seen it once before. I don't know, like maybe between 3 to 5 years. I forget now. But yeah, like, it's been a while for me. And probably I think maximum I would say second time. If I've seen it previously before then it was like parts and parts I knew of it.
Okay. But either way, you're watching it after the whatever knowledge of what it is and what kind of beast it is.
And then but the first time I hadn't thankfully read up on like how insane like some parts of it were, like at least the praise parts. So I wasn't expecting the first time I watched it to like the Mahabharata scene when it comes, and like that completely blew me over. Then I was like laughing out loud in the living room. My mom was like, "Are you okay? Like, is everything okay?" This time I feel like because I knew it was coming, so almost like I don't know, some revisionist way, my expectations were now higher. I was like, I'm expecting to be like, LOLing like again at the same scene, which like obviously it's not gonna happen, right? It's not the same thing. You've gone through the jokes before, like you're expecting with Chopra to be like kya ho raha hai beta, kya ho raha hai? So like the line doesn't deliver or land in the same way, obviously, because you were expecting it almost. But the reason I ask that question is because I feel like there are the movie is obviously intentionally goofy and over the top, like that's supposed to be like that's the thing. If you can't stand that, then the movie's not for you. But when they try to do dramatic stuff, right, in the middle, when they obviously a lot of drama is paid for laughs, like you're supposed to be laughing at the people who are saying very serious things, like at the bridge when the new commissioner and Tarneja are giving their speeches, like they're literally saying bakwas. They're just saying things which like you're like, what are you saying? Like, do you realize the things you are revealing by the contents you're saying? But that's the intentional. It's all it's not trying. They're not trying to be actually serious. But then there are moments where they're trying to be serious, like in the lab when they're trying to magnify the photos and stuff around then, which like sometimes like maybe like this was seen not properly thought out in the terms of how it was going to appear to the audience.
The lab photos thing, you're right. Yeah, that is one of the moments where it's not supposed to be goofy, like it's not camp.
Yeah, they actually become serious. Like they're like, oh, like we're investing in your death for real now.
There's also a scene where a gang of like journalists is interviewing Tarneja on the rooftop.
Yeah, which also like reads like too on the nose. It's almost like you're talking to me what the movie is about.
Yeah, but I feel that by that time, like I was, and I again like watching it again yesterday. That's just how this movie communicates, like everything. So it's not like it's out of place. So I'm not really. It's not
but
jarring.
A lot of places it's clever about it, right? Like the way it approaches how the builders operate in India and stuff like that. Like all of that, like it's still, which is insane. It's still true 40 years later. These things. Any of that changed.
That's one thing actually that kind of, again, I'm sure whenever I watch it, I'm like, I think the same things. But then again, like the scene at the rooftop where the journalist is like, like people are standing in queues,
and they
waiting
don't
for trains.
Even show Tarneja as a journalist anymore. They literally start doing a long zoom shot on like the actual crowd down
crowds,
below.
yeah.
And I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, like what is this, a documentary now?
Yeah. But then that line in particular is maybe one of the most, it's immediately clear why this movie is still like holds up, right? Because it could literally be about yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. If you just kind of tweak the visuals, you would not know. If you just listen to the person talking, you would not know. And that is in a strange way, because what this movie is saying is that here is a cycle that we're trapped in, and we're kind of cursed to exist within this cycle. And that's seen in, I don't know, deliberately or not, but then it kind of hits home that, oh, this is the central theme of the movie, and
Yeah,
we're not
like we're
escaping
surrounded
this.
by Tarnejas. We have few Tarnejas who control our country.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why this movie is so memorable is also because, you know, the Mahabharata scene it's such a strong climax. But then the actual climax is just shocking. Like I remember watching it as a child and I was shaken, because you're watching a goofy movie, and even as a child, you know it's a goofy movie, right?
Yeah.
5 minutes ago you were laughing.
Yeah, and you would expect in a goofy movie like this, like, you know, some like scheme would happen and people would be running from each other, and that's how it would end in the way. Like you don't expect like, you don't even expect the Mahabharata scene, right? Because that comes out of nowhere. Because one moment they're at that guy Ahuja's guest house.
Yeah.
They're trying to like, you know, balance the body, and they're running around, and suddenly
And
like
then the
burkhas appear out of nowhere, and they're still running around. You don't expect, it's like a wild left turn. Literally the characters take a left turn into an alley and they end up in this thing, and you're like, what just happened?
Yeah, it's like full inspired lunacy, right? It's when it's like you can't plan that, it just happens. But yeah, like, and I mean, the ending is kind of like, where did that come from? Firstly, they're like breaking the fourth wall fully, and it doesn't feel like it belongs in the movie. It feels like such a coda, and they're dead. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's weird to kind of think
That's
about.
literally what they're conveying. They're conveying that these people are hung inside prison. They're not actually here.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, we reached the climax already. But then there are those like really famous like individual set pieces that like people still talk about, you know, like the DeMello, the cake scene.
Yeah.
And
which is that's part of the goofiness, right? Like I mean, a normal movie, you just be like, why are they peeking outside the window? Everyone can see them. Or like, how are they peeking behind the sofa? But like, that's the part of the movie's like charm and like just like appeal. It's like they're like, yeah, we know the setup is outrageous, but we're gonna that's the whole point.
Yeah, which is very interesting, right? Because a lot of people try to kind of win you over with sheer, you know, just like, here's what we're putting on the table, and you either buy into it or you don't. And it takes some level of skill to kind of turn the audience, like convince the audience to kind of not analyze this. Like it's actually a pretty impressive feat, you know, to change the way that you think, to change the way that you kind of perceive not just reality but even movies, right?
Yeah.
And very like interestingly, like coincidentally, like just this week, Karan Johar was talking about something very similar, you know, in like his new movie, Rocky Aur Rani Ki Prem Kahani, where Dharmendra's character, who is paraplegic, he's like wheelchair bound, he doesn't move, but in 2 song sequences, he just rises to his feet and starts singing. And he's like, nobody noticed, which is the greatest thing that he could have hoped for. Like nobody started pointing it out. How did he start just stand? How did he start dancing? And then he's like, oh, then that's how I knew that the movie kind of is working, right? Because you're not questioning these things. And in Jaane Bhi Do Yaaro, like, chalo, in Rocky Rani, just like 1 or 2 scenes, right? But in Jaane Bhi Do Yaaro, it's like, see,
the entire movie
scene,
is that.
Yeah,
they become like Ahuja's bodyguards. You're like, how can this happen? Like, but no, you don't care. You're like, okay, like, I'm allowed this to happen because I want to see what you're doing next after this nonsense.
Also, it's very sneakily like cine literate, right? But there's like obviously a very overt kind of reference to Antonioni, right? The murder happens in Antonioni Park, right? Yeah. But then there's that classic like Marx Brothers scene, like the one that you were just mentioning, where they turn into bodyguards and Naseeruddin Shah is having a phone conversation with Satish Kaushik.
Everything, every moment of that scene makes no sense, right? Because like, ek to pehle like assistant should be questioning ki phone baja kab, I didn't hear it. But like that's not the point. It's just like he's just it's that stupid. Everything is shown to be like that stupid and like dumb. Is that call has come, secret call has come. Okay. What is the secret code? Oh, then again like a reference to their own old movie.
No, but then they're also like leveling up the goofiness, right? So when you expect them to kind of be like, oh, this is insane, and I'm riding with you here.
Yeah.
They take it up.
They take it ahead. They're like, oh, abhi to call दो अलग room में था. नहीं, अब call now they're in the same room with their backs to each other.
And then there's Satish Kaushik looks at him and there's a bear.
He looks at him and he questions him. Were you listening to me? No, you weren't listening to me. Okay, thank you. Then he bumps into them. There's another layer to it, right? Then they exchange phones. He starts using his receiver. He starts using his receiver. Yeah. And after there's another layer where they just hang up the phone and he starts whispering into his ear.
Now they're having a real conversation.
Exactly. And he doesn't question ever. Because that's the whole point. Like this guy is like, we have escaped, as you said, reality.
Yeah, we've escaped reality and somehow the lunacy is working, right? Which incidentally, if you've read like, or obviously like listened to or watched interviews of these people since then, a lot of them have died. But Naseeruddin Shah talks about it, and often he talks about it in a very complex way, right? So part of it is like, yes, people have died. A lot of them have died, and he was very close to especially Om Puri. Naseeruddin Shah, right? One of the closest friends, and you can sense that he's still beat up about it. But then he also talks about on set, he didn't buy into it. He didn't buy the lunacy. He was like, I did not understand what was happening. I thought of myself as a serious actor, and I could not.
Yeah, he has a theatre background, right?
Yeah. He's Naseeruddin Shah in that era is a Best Actor nominee at the Venice Film Festival. So. He is at the peak of his game, and he's doing this, and then he doesn't understand it, right? And he's gone.
Yeah, because a movie like this has never been made, and even if it has been made, it has never worked. So then to attempt this, like while you're making it, obviously you have no idea what's gonna happen to it.
Yeah. So he's spoken about it. He's like, I didn't know what was happening, and I was not very pleasant on set because Kundan Shah was doing his thing, but he's like, oh, then I understood. It clicked to me that he was making a Marx Brothers movie. And that's when it kind of all came together in his head, right? Which is, a great way to kind of...
Yeah, the second time I was watching it, like yesterday I was watching it, I was like, this movie is probably like even better if you're like actually not in your senses.
If you're like drunk or stoned or something.
Yeah. I think this movie will work even better. I think this is an actual, like, they've accidentally made a stoner comedy. Or maybe they're not accidentally, maybe they intentionally made one.
It's fully possible.
Yeah.
It does feel like I mean, not typically a stoner comedy. It feels like someone who was a stoner and has just come to their senses and has realized, like the world is
just like crazy and too boring. Like I don't want to live here.
Because there is like also a sense of anger to it, right?
Yeah. There's very much sense of anger to it.
Which is interesting to note because it's an 80s Hindi movie, right? And we have at that era, they had just emerged from the 70s, which was famously...
The Angry Young Man.
Yes. And that was like that was a response to the emergency and everything. And this is like slightly like, like our country is still in bad shape.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe it's like preempting a lot of things that are going to happen. And
it's a response to Angry Young Man movie. Right? It's like, like a bunch of angry young men can't solve our country. Like that's not going to do anything.
Yeah. And it's an everyman movie, but the everyman at the center of it learn how like their anger develops as the movie goes on. Like initially they're just concerned about their own little business.
Yeah.
And then they suddenly turn into crusaders. Like they get angry. There's a very nice...
they have a business which is not doing at all well. They're basically struggling like photo artists who like accidentally become investigative photojournalists.
Yeah. Which again, we just roll with it. Like, okay, of course.
Sure, that can happen.
You're doing like little portfolios and now you're like just exposing corporate corruption or whatever.
Woman just walks into your studio and like says like, this is your assignment and roll with it. And you're like, okay, why not?
But yeah, like speaking about like those brief moments where the movie is like sincere, not sincerely like goofy, but sincerely sincere, is that... after they literally like unearthed DeMello's body,
Hmm.
and they lose the ball.
Like, so that's how you just juxtapose it, right? You do a very sincere thing, and uske 3 seconds later, they're just like sitting on the pavement and they lose the ball
yeah, and then the
because a train went by.
no, but the sincere part is the train station thing, right? After they've had the
After
cop,
they have interaction with the lone police officer.
yeah, the police officer, when they go to the station, and that's when like at least Vinod is like, it hits him like, oh my god,
Yeah, that's his lowest point of the movie. Like, he's like beaten. He's like, I'm done with this world.
Yeah, I have literally zero money. I can't get home. And in a way, it's him kind of compromising also, because he's still like, without ticket kaise ja sakte hain? That's not, that's breaking the rules, right? And it kind of reminded me also of a movie that I never would have kind of connected to it before yesterday. It's like Bhavesh Joshi Superhero. Because I remembered the scene in which the main character in that movie he's trying to get like a passport, right? And he goes through the motions, and he follows the rules, and he goes to the police station, verify kar do, verify kar do, verify kar do, and they don't do it, and then he's forced to pay like a bribe, and the cop is like, "Aap pehle kar dete ye, solve ho jati aapki sab problems." And that's him kind
in this
of
sense, this is like also reminiscent of like, say, movies from Asghar Farhadi, right? Like, it's characters who are trying to like be good people, but they're morally compromised by events around them, like one by one.
And that like just the riding on a train without a ticket is such a huge deal for him, right? Which is juxtaposed by like the actual crimes that, like, Taneja's actually killed a person.
Yeah.
And it's implied that
and that guy's smiling on the bridge he built over the dead body, literally.
Yeah. And he's got like a new person he's paying off. He was paying off DeMello, and he was paying off DeMello's predecessor.
And he has like no compunctions about it. He's like expanded his empire. That's why the journalist scene is important, right? They want to show that no, this is not just like a regular dude. This is a dude who's doing this on like multiple fronts.
Yeah. Also, like, the interesting thing about it is that the Bhakti Barve character, who's introduced as this crusading, like,
exactly, like, who's supposed to be like the actual investigative journalist,
is also like
eventually she doesn't care.
She doesn't care, right? Which is very like, it hits like it's so close to the truth, because as anybody who works in the media would know, like, it's all really a front, right? All these people who are pretending to be like either like left wing or right wing, either side, they're all like, just, it's performance, right? And those people are, at least especially on television, those people are like fully like concerned only about themselves.
Part of this broadcast journalism, right? In a way, it makes actors out of you.
It does make actors out of you. And like, I mean, I spent literally almost a decade in print, not print particularly, but around print journalists and digital journalists, and like, you can sense these tendencies like tend to like creep up in all sorts of people who would like for the world to believe that they're, you know, truth tellers or whatever. So that way also the movie is very like, in its goofiness, there are these unavoidable sort of truths.
Yeah. And in its goofiness also, like, what I found interesting with that character is that it's also like powerfully feminist as well, the movie.
Yeah, in ways, yes.
Yeah.
It has people call out moments of bad behavior, and then also like larger points. Yeah.
And obviously, like, it doesn't ever forget that it needs to be funny as well. Like, one of the scenes that stood out to me the second time, now that I was watching it, was that so it's almost like a long take, pun not intended, where Shobha and Vinod are standing and they're looking into the mirror. That's how it's framed. And she's trying to get him into her scheme, right? Like, of like what he needs to do for her. Like, and it's the arc that they go through, and it's just like entire time he starts off as like, oh, you know, I need to be paid for my things, and I'm doing this for you service. And by the end, it's like, yeah, whatever you do, say I will do.
Yeah.
He just goes through a full like 180 in front of her, like by standing in front of the mirror.
Yeah, not to mention Barbie again, but I thought of Barbie mainly because Barbie is recent. But then in that scene, I was like, oh, here is a version of what Barbie did at the end, the movie Barbie. And I was like, similar. But in this one, she wasn't playing dumb.
Yeah.
She wasn't like, egging the guy on to kind of she was kind of conniving and getting her way, which is
basically this entire world except Vinod and Sudhir.
and
They don't know how to do that.
They don't know how to do that, and like the movie is like, yeah, you idiots, like you're not going to get anywhere if you stay like this, which is like, yeah, the strange kind of anomaly that this movie is, right? Because you wouldn't expect the grand takeaway to be so like
nihilistic,
despondent. Yeah, like it's like, oh, like, so there's no hope, you're saying? What do you
which
do?
is why like that's why the movie's like title in a way like sort of conveys semi-optimism, like, but then when you actually go through it and you like sort of almost get like a new take on what the title is saying.
Yeah, if they'd just minded their own business, they'd be fine.
Yeah.
Or if they'd, if you had just minded your business, you'll probably be fine. But then the moment you start kind of fighting for what you think is right is when you're probably going to lose, right? Which you kind of like sentence yourself to like a pretty unhappy kind of end.
Yeah, which is what one of the key repetitions thing in the movie is that the truth will always win thing, right? Which is like, and that's what they're trying to mock.
Which the musical motif obviously is Hum Honge Kamyab.
Yeah.
Right? Which is grand subversion.
Yeah. It's the complete like opposite. It's almost like the 80s version of like, like Ranveer Kapoor saying, Ranveer Singh saying, apna time aayega, but then basically like, bro, tera time kabhi nahi aayega.
Yeah, it's as if like Gully Boy ends with him like losing the competition and losing everything.
Yeah, and then just staying in the slum because that's what happens to the other 99% Gully Boys. But they only show you the 1% because that's how you make inspirational movies.
Yeah, and the movie is very like, it kind of leads you to believe that they're going to, especially like after the Mahabharat scene where the cops come, you're like, oh, finally cops are here.
Yeah, like they'll say things to power, they'll believe their version, they'll catch them, they'll see the evidence, they'll do an autopsy on the body, and they'll prove that the gunshots are there. But what autopsy? What investigation? This is India.
It is India. Yeah, and who like on rewatch, who would you say was your like standout like character or moment?
Moment, I think as a scene I mentioned. I don't know moment, but the scene I told you, the mirror one I really enjoyed at this time more. Character is an interesting one. So obviously, in that the scenes he's given before he dies, Satish Shah is very good.
Very good. Even after he dies, he's very good.
Yeah, he actually has to be very good. Yeah, because you have to play a dead body, which is not easy.
I remember as a child, it was very like kind of like scary also to watch a dead body.
Yeah, it is very weird. Like, like how do you even get that past?
Yeah. Especially that scene with the Ahuja, where Ahuja bumps into him and he's like, एक शराबी की मदद करेगा, and he like fixes his he's like
I just love that Ahuja is just like perpetually drunk throughout the movie.
Yeah. Om Puri is like really like he's leading into it, right? He understands exactly like if Naseeruddin Shah was struggling with the tone, this dude is not. Yeah, he was like, I know exactly what movie.
When they try to pull his real hair out because there's documents inside it. Who believes this nonsense? And then you would forget believe, you actually practice, you're like, no, it must be there, let's pull it out.
Yeah. And the bomb scene, we didn't speak about the bomb scene.
Oh god, yeah.
Which is another Hitchcock thing, right? After the Antonio thing.
Yes, there are actually other moments as well where they take the audience ahead of the characters as well. Like, they cut when they say, when we go from them trying to see this they're at the park in the Antony Park at night, both of them, and they see the car driving it. They're like, whose body it must be? We don't know. And then the movie's like cuts and they show dedicated to Commissioner D. Mello. Like, okay, yeah, thank you. That's the answer.
Yeah. Satish Shah he's really good in this movie, and people like obviously like you're not going to think of it as acting when he's dead, but then there's so much acting required, like especially in the Draupadi scene and everything.
No, I think actually the Draupadi scene I would say requires less acting than the other stuff where he's being carried around. To like remain that stiff and your eyes and your head at a specific angle and stuff like that. It's just like he has to play a mannequin, like, and he does it expertly.
Or when he's like, when Om Puri is like stuffing a cigarette in his mouth, it's like, ye le pi.
And there's also like unintended things as well, right? Because he comes back, he's trying to change the tire, and then he drops the coffin from the back. He's like, "Oh, this tire is too big for your car." I'm like, "What is going on?" And then the cigarette falls inside the coffin,
Yeah.
which like they don't know one points out, but like I'm like, yeah, maybe they could have made a joke on that as well. He's like, "तू cigarette पूरी पी गया, तूने दी नहीं वापस मुझे."
He's like a sports model.
Sports. Oh god, that scene is insane. Like, just like him buying it thoroughly. The entire moment he doesn't realize until he's in the office the next day with Shobha, and he's like, "Oh damn, that must have been a dead body." Like what? You took him to your guest house. You put him in one place.
I mean, so this is how I kind of watch. Like, I know that the dead body thing is going to happen now, and I know, obviously, I know the Mahabharata thing, but like the back of my hand, like, you know, तोड़ दिया, भाड़े पे लिया था, all that stuff. Like, मैंने चीरहरण का प्लान ड्रॉप कर दिया. So yeah, I mean, this kind of movie that you even like 50 years from now, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is still happening and it's still funny.
Yeah, it'll take a revolutionary like change for the country to avoid making this like still not be true from now. Like, but did this movie, like, I don't know Bollywood history very well, but like, does the movie inspire like copycats in the 80s?
I'm not sure actually if it inspired copy. It wasn't an immediate hit, right?
It wasn't immediate, but yeah, like later on, like when people realized how good it was, like the industry must have been like, oh wait, this work, maybe we should try more.
I'm not sure if it's a direct kind of comparison, but for sure there were a lot of like movies made in the 90s and early 2000s, you know, those, and a lot of them obviously weren't, none of them were as good, but a few of those Priyadarshan movies had a similar like inspired lunacy kind of vibe to them, you know, those halchals and hangamas and hera fairies, you know, those movies are similarly well regarded, you know, and they, again, similarly, like there are 15 characters doing insane things, like each scene is more unbelievable than the last one. So I'm not sure if it's direct because there's no like political commentary in it, there's no satire.
Yeah. It is lunacy for lunacy's sake.
And there is, and similarly, like when people talk about those movies, you know, they're also like, yeah, like it just happened, you know, like we can't really explain what happened, and they've tried to kind of replicate it, but they haven't obviously been able to. But yeah, I don't know if it's a direct kind of lineage, but then there is obviously like in the 90s and the 2000s is probably when this movie hit cult status, right? And yeah. They've tried to make a sequel, but like as Naseeruddin Shah said, like everybody's dead. That's not happening.
Yeah, and like the main characters are dead. Why would you even attempt a sequel?
I'm glad, like actually, that they didn't.
Although the fact that, you know, the movie is so over the top, like you could basically make a sequel and like have them alive in the first scene and nobody questions it, and that's how the movie works. Because that's the only way to make sense. Is that they're just around. What are you talking about? What jail?
I had a good time watching it again.
Time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay then. That's all for this episode of The Long Take. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at The Long Take Pod. You can write to us at thelongtakepod@gmail.com. Please leave us a rating and a review wherever this episode, and we will see you next week.